Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. Ashley Bradford said it at 8:47 a.m. over Zoom with her camera off, just a black square with her initials where her face should have been. I'm Jason Reynolds, 54 years old, and the CEO's 34-year-old daughter just fired me without showing her face. You know what really gets me? There was supposed to be an envelope on the conference room table. Cream-colored, sealed. I'd walked in at 8:45 expecting our weekly systems review. Same room, same time, same burnt coffee in the break room, but nobody else showed up, just me and my laptop. Then the Zoom ping meeting request from Ashley Bradford. I should have known right there. She had a Wharton MBA and about zero understanding of what we actually built. 3 months at the company, promoted to Chief Innovation Officer because she was Nathan Bradford's daughter. The CEO's golden child, here to modernize our approach. Look, I'll be honest with you. Last month, she asked in a product meeting if we could add blockchain to make Nexus predict user emotions. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I explained that infrastructure security systems don't need to detect feelings, they need to detect threats, she made a note on her laptop. I saw the screen. Jason, resistant to innovation. 2 weeks ago, she pitched Nexus to Series D investors as Spotify for infrastructure. Ryan Cooper, one of the engineers I'd trained, had to leave the room because he was laughing. You've probably seen this before. Some executive who thinks buzzwords equal strategy. Now here she was on Zoom, camera off, with another black square labeled HR. We're restructuring some of our legacy roles, Ashley continued. Her voice was steady, practiced like she'd rehearsed this in front of a mirror. And unfortunately, your position is being eliminated. You'll find your severance details in the envelope on the conference room table. Legacy roles. Here's the thing. I built the Nexus system this entire company ran on. Designed the architecture, wrote the core protocols, debugged it at 3 a.m. when Series B funding almost fell through. 19 years here, first engineer hired after Series A. I'd trained half the people who now outranked me, and I was legacy. This isn't a reflection of your contributions, the HR voice added. Female, scripted, uncomfortable. We appreciate everything you've brought to Cybercore Dynamics over the years. I looked at that envelope sitting on the polished table. Didn't touch it. Where's Nathan? I asked. Pause. Half a second too long. He's in strategy meetings this morning, Ashley said, but he wanted me to personally handle this transition. Right. The CEO couldn't be bothered to fire his longest-serving engineer himself, sent his daughter to do it over Zoom with her camera off. You know what I mean? 24 years building this company, and this is how it ends. Wait, let me back up. It was 19 years, not 24. When you're getting fired, your brain does funny things with numbers. There was supposed to be a third camera square. General Counsel. I'd been told he'd be on this call. His square stayed black the whole time. Coward probably knew this was a lawsuit waiting to happen and wanted distance. Is there anything else we need to address? HR asked. I thought about saying something about how Ashley announced the Innovatix AI rebrand at TechCrunch disrupt last month without telling engineering. New logo, new website, press release. She'd renamed my entire system, and I found out from Twitter about how she had no idea what Nexus actually did or why it mattered. But I didn't say any of that. No, I said, we're done here. I closed the laptop, picked up the envelope. My hands were steadier than I expected. Walking out, I passed Ryan Cooper's desk. He was 29, systems engineer, one of the good ones. I'd mentored him for 4 years, taught him everything about Nexus architecture. Kid had a wife and a baby on the way. Reminded me of myself when I was starting out, except he was smarter and asked better questions. He looked up, saw my face, saw the envelope. Jason, he said quietly. They're restructuring legacy roles, I told him. He just stared. He knew exactly what that meant. The parking garage smelled like concrete and exhaust. 3rd floor, same spot I'd parked in for 19 years when I could get it. My car was a 2018 sedan, nothing fancy, paid off 2 years ago, smelled like coffee and that leather cleaner. my ex-wife used to buy before the divorce 8 years back. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, didn't open the envelope, didn't need to. I knew what severance packages looked like, probably 6 months' salary, some COBRA coverage, standard non-compete clause that didn't matter because who was going to hire a 54-year-old legacy engineer anyway? But here's what they didn't know, and I mean they really didn't know, so get this. 10 years ago, I was sitting in my grandfather's home office. He'd just died. Heart attack at 78. No warning, just gone. He was a Navy JAG lawyer, worked military IP law for 35 years, sharp until the very end. This guy could dissect a contract faster than most people read the sports page. I was 44 then, and Nexus was just hitting functional stability. I'd been working on it nights and weekends before Cybercore even knew what it could become. Version 0. 9 Alpha, the core architecture that everything else got built on. That was mine before I signed any full-time employment contract. My grandfather knew that. He understood how these things worked. 3 days before he died, he left me an audio diary entry. I'd saved it, still had it. Sometimes I played it on bad days, and let me tell you, I was about to have a lot of bad days. Jason. His voice was scratchy, tired. He'd been working late on a case. Whatever you're building at that defense startup, don't give them ownership before they earn your trust. I watched them erase my name from a patent I drafted for 3 years at Norfolk Naval Base. Took me 6 months in court to get it back. Here's where it gets interesting, he continued. Set up an LLC, file the provisional patent yourself. You can license it to them later, but keep the signature yours. Corporate loyalty goes one direction until it doesn't. Trust me on this, son. I must have listened to that message 20 times the week after he died. Then I did exactly what he said. Sat in his office, surrounded by his law books and those old wooden file cabinets, and I filed the paperwork. Reynolds Defense Systems, LLC, registered in Delaware. Nexus Core System version 0. 9 Alpha, full architecture and encryption protocols. Owner and architect, Jason Reynolds. That was 6 weeks before Cybercore made me their full-time offer. Before any employment IP agreements. Before any of the contracts they thought gave them control. You want to know the beautiful part? I'd licensed Nexus to Cybercore under specific terms. Their legal team skimmed it, saw my signature, filed it away under employee inventions, and never looked at the dates. They assumed employment contract covered everything. Nobody checked that version. 9 was filed before I was technically their employee. But I'd buried something in that licensing agreement. 2 clauses that would matter later. Clause 11, 3, said no licensing rights, no derivative works, no transfers could happen without written approval from the original architect. That was me. Clause 8, 2, said no system renaming or rebranding without original architect approval. So here's where Ashley screwed up. She'd just announced InnovateXAI at a public tech conference last month. New name, new branding, press release, the whole show. She'd breached Clause 8. 2, without even knowing it existed. And now they'd fired me. I started the car, drove home, made coffee and waited, because incompetence always reveals itself. You just have to give it time. The email came 3 days later. Wednesday morning, 9:23 a.m. I was drinking coffee on my couch, still in sweatpants, trying to figure out what retirement at 54 actually looked like. My ex-wife always said I'd work until I died. Guess we were both wrong about that. Subject line, request for confidential conversation. Sender, Scott Patterson, CTO of Titan Tech Solutions. I stared at that name for a solid minute before opening it. Titan Tech was Cybercore's oldest competitor. We'd gone head-to-head on federal contracts for years, tracked each other's patents. Built entire product strategies around outmaneuvering them. In public, we pretended they didn't exist. In private, every engineering decision considered what Titan Tech might do next. And now their CTO was in my inbox. Look, I'll be honest with you. My first thought was this was some kind of setup, corporate espionage thing. But I clicked it open anyway. Mr. Reynolds, we have reason to believe you, not Cybercore. Hold the underlying rights to the Nexus core architecture. If this is accurate, We'd like to discuss an exclusive licensing agreement. We believe the original architect should decide where his work goes next. Would you be open to a conversation? This can be handled with complete discretion. Scott Patterson, direct. Professional, no games. I read it twice. Then I stood up and walked to my window. My apartment overlooked a parking lot and some trees, nothing special. Paid for by 19 years of salary and stock options that vested slowly. The belief that loyalty mattered and hard work got rewarded. You know what I realized sitting there? Turns out loyalty is just another word for convenient when you're dealing with people like Ashley Bradford. But this email was different. They'd done their homework. They knew something Cybercore's legal team apparently never bothered to check. How did you know? I typed back. His response came in under an hour. We track all Nexus-related patents as part of competitive intelligence. When we saw Reynolds Defense Systems owned the core filing, not Cybercore Corporate, we did the math. Your signature, your LLC, filed before your employment start date. We've been waiting to see if you knew. Smart, patient, the kind of operation that actually read the fine print. You've probably worked with companies like that, the ones that do their homework, while everyone else wings it. I typed one line. If we're talking, we do it in person. He replied in 20 minutes. Meeting set for Monday, his office. He'd fly me out, cover everything, keep it quiet. I said yes. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years, pulled out all the original files. The provisional patent, filing from my grandfather's office, the LLC registration for Reynolds Defense Systems, the licensing agreement I'd signed with Cybercore back in 2015 when they were too excited about Series B funding to examine the details. I went through every page, every clause, every date. It was all still there. Clean, legal, ironclad. Here's the thing that gets me. Cybercore thought they owned Nexus because I built it while employed. Standard assumption, but employment doesn't override prior art. Version 0. 9 Alpha was mine before they hired me full-time. Everything after that was licensed to them, not transferred, not sold, licensed. And Ashley's Innovatix AI rebrand at TechCrunch Disrupt, public announcement, new branding, press release, that triggered Clause 8. 2. Breach of contract. Every licensing agreement tied to Nexus could be challenged now. They'd fired the architect and breached the contract in the same month. Monday morning, I flew out. Tentech's office was in a different city. Cleaner than Cybercore's flashy headquarters, less glass and steel, more function. The kind of building designed for people who knew what they were doing, not people trying to prove it. Scott Patterson met me in the lobby. 58 years old, looked like someone who'd spent 25 years actually building systems instead of managing people who built systems. Firm handshake, direct eye contact. The kind of guy who probably served too, just from how he carried himself. Jason, he said, thanks for coming. You said you did your homework, I replied. Show me. He took me to a conference room. Glass walls, no theater, just a table and chairs. He opened a folder. Inside was a complete breakdown, my LLC filing, the original Nexus provisional patent. A timeline, showing version 0. 9 Alpha was submitted 6 weeks before my Cybercore employment contract. Clauses, 11, 3 and 8, 2 highlighted in yellow. You're the owner, he said simply. Not them. We'd like to work with you, not around you. He slid another document across the table. Exclusive licensing agreement, $280 million over 8 years. Role, Chief Technical Architect with full approval rights on any derivative works. Office, team, resources, everything. Now I know what you're thinking. $280 million sounds like a lot of money. It is. But spread over 8 years, for a system that powers critical infrastructure, that's $35 million a year. In the defense contractor world, that's reasonable for something this important. We don't hire pedigrees, Scott said. We hire architects. I read through it, every clause, every term. My grandfather taught me that. Read everything twice. Trust nothing you don't verify. It was clean, fair, more than fair. I looked up at Scott. He wasn't smiling, wasn't selling, just waiting. What happens to Cybercore? I asked. That depends on them, he said. If they try to expand Nexus deployment or license it to anyone else, they'll hit your clauses. Their lawyers will figure it out eventually, but that's not your problem anymore. He was right. It wasn't. I stared at that contract for 30 seconds. 19 years at Cybercore. I'd trained half their engineers, built the infrastructure from nothing, stayed through 4 rounds of layoffs, declined 2 CTO offers from other companies. Because I believed in loyalty, and they fired me over Zoom with the camera off.